I'm excited we got Kelly Keegan in the studio today, and Kelly is an attorney at law, as it says on her business card, attorney at law. And I found Kelly's name because I'm a member of the United States Conceal and Carry Association, and I was just kind of snooping around on the website. And when you're a member of that group, you get a card that's if you shoot somebody, on the back of the card it says
you should call someone.
You should probably ought to call somebody.
Try not to shoot people.
Yeah, try not. That's what they really stress. Don't shoot anybody. It'll change your life forever, whether you are justified or not. And but the point of it is that the whole notion of it is to be prepared. Okay, so then I'm thinking that I needed to buy another gun, and so I'm checking around, and you can't buy any guns. I mean, they're all sold out. Ammunition.
Well, you were trying to get that sawed-off shotgun, which is with a pistol handle.
Yes, I wanted a under-the-bed shotgun. I wanted.
That's not a shotgun anymore.
Isn't it? What is it?
What is it?
It's not considered a shotgun unless it's shot from the shoulder.
Is that right?
If you're going to have a pistol handle on it, then you can't,
Well, I just wanted something I could pull out from under my bed, because if someone comes busting in the house in the middle of the night, right? You're kind of all groggy.
Right. You need to spray.
I want a scatter gun, right? It's something that's loud and, will knock anything down coming down the hallway, no matter, I could, with my eyes closed. Anyhow, couldn't find one.
Yeah.
So then I'm snooping around on the site, and then they say, the emergency response team. And your name was on the emergency response team. And I thought, something? When all this trouble was going on in South Minnie, the neighborhood watch captains were going around and knocking on the doors, telling people that they needed to protect their property because the cops weren't coming. And there were, right off of south of Lake Street there, I mean, they were running up and down the neighborhoods. The gangs were running up and down the neighborhoods and marking and stuff like that. And they were just saying, protect your property. What the heck does that mean? So we got all people buying guns that normally don't own guns.
I'm well aware.
Right. and they're buying up all the ammunition. And then you've got the neighborhood watch captain saying, protecting your property. Some people are going to get themselves in some serious trouble here. And so when your name came out, I thought, this is terrific, because we have a lot of listeners who need to hear the word. So
start with background and how you got into it.
Exactly.
And all the, like, how you got into this side.
Let's get your expertise in there. Someone asked me the other day, what makes a good real estate agent? So what makes a good attorney in this area, and how did you become interested in this line of law?
Yeah, I kind of fell into it, actually. I enjoy firearms, and I'm a criminal defense attorney by trade, meaning I don't do any family law. I don't do any real estate law.
Okay.
I'm a defense attorney. I'm a trial attorney. And I also do a lot of cleaning up of people's criminal histories, expungements, pardons. And where I really got into firearms was I started to take on cases where people wanted to get their gun rights back. They had lost them after going through the criminal justice system.
Okay.
And understandably, people wanted to have firearms for various reasons. Hunting's probably the most common reason, but lately it's been a lot of personal protection issues, and I actually have an interesting point about that I'll probably get to. But and so it became a lot of firearms law that I started doing. And as a defense attorney, it naturally lended itself to dealing with self-defense issues. I mean, I have a number of cases right now where people are charged with sawed-off shotguns, bad idea. And cases where
even
people
if you buy them, what's the shortest shotgun you can have?
Has to be over 18 inches.
Okay, let's write that
18-inch barrel.
Okay.
Which there's some, I won't go into too
many
details.
No pistol handle?
No pistol handle. It has to be shot from the shoulder.
Really? Shoulder?
To be classified as a shotgun.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah, he's literally making notes. Like, okay, note to self.
Put your cell phone in my safe.
How many rounds can they carry?
3.
Oh no.
Total. 1 in the chamber, 2.
I thought, no, a shotgun you can have automatic and has 7 in. You can have 7 in.
Sure. So here's the thing. Okay. So Minnesota law, when it comes to shotguns, I have a case right now where I'm dealing with this. So Minnesota's law when it comes to shotguns, the issue too is the federal laws and the state laws don't necessarily match up.
Okay.
And so there's this whole kind of conflict between which law controls. And so like I have a case right now where my client was in possession of a sawed-off shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing becomes, well, how do you measure? You know, what's an 18-inch barrel? I mean, do you measure it from just the barrel that's sticking out from the receiver? Do you, if you were to disassemble it, you know, there's obviously a part that goes into the receiver. And it's like, well, does that count?
Mm-hmm.
And the laws in Minnesota are really silent on a lot of this stuff. So it's kind of like, well, it's going to be a good fight. This is why lawyers are busy.
Yeah, yeah.
But
so it makes it interesting.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
So,
it's a very interesting area to practice.
So back up on that story. So tell us about where does that case come from? Like, how do you end up with that case, and then
that actually
that you're to the point that you have to measure a barrel, like.
Yeah.
So walk through that.
Well, you know, and it's interesting because the state obviously has the firearm right now, and they're sending it to the BCA, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which is kind of like our state arm of our FBI, if you will. I mean, all the fingerprints and DNA samples go there. But so apparently they're sending it to the BCA to do a measurement, and the question becomes, what do? You know, the ATF way to measure this is you're supposed to take a dowel rod and stick it into the barrel, mark it, and then measure that, right?
That makes sense to me.
Well, but it doesn't to me, because that is a really subjective measurement. I mean, if we're getting into...
But that's where the bullet is.
Well, but here's the thing. If you're getting into a law that criminalizes somebody, I mean, we're talking about felony charges, the measurement is incredibly important. And if we're talking about things like a 1/16 of an inch, I mean, that is a tiny amount.
Right.
And to take a dowel rod, which, you know, that's the ATF way to measure this, right? Minnesota doesn't necessarily have this as a way to measure this, but that's the ATF sanctioned way to do this. The problem, though, is, I mean, a dowel rod is presumably then wood, right? We're sort of implicating that it's a wood instrument. But, you know, what's the conditions it's in? Is it a humid room where it's expanding?
Oh, come on.
I mean, but seriously, do you want to be, but here's the thing. It's the difference between being a felon and a total law-abiding citizen.
Okay.
It's incredibly important.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
So if you're going to cut your
close,
shotgun off, give yourself a quarter of an inch.
Exactly. Don't cut it close. Don't be
Don't
doing
be
that.
cutting
Wood
it
could be
close.
warped.
You know, don't be like, oh, let's just cut it right off at 18. I mean, that's that can be a subjective measurement.
So
you think it can't, but it can.
So you literally argue that.
Oh, yeah. There's all kinds of things that come up. I mean, I have one right now that is basically right on the nose. I mean, and we're fighting about it. Yeah, it'll be an interesting thing. And I don't know the answer yet of how it's going to shake out, but it's an interesting issue.
And why did you have that case? Like was there somebody shoot somebody? Was there this?
Or somebody just get ratted out, reported, or what?
Yeah.
Yeah,
how does it come to you?
It's a case actually that, it actually came through the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. But it's a case where my client is accused of assaulting his daughter's boyfriend, and with a firearm, basically threatening him with a firearm.
All right.
And then they come and they bust into the house, and then they find out he's got these firearms in there, and there's a lot of issues going on with that case actually. But yeah, so I do a lot of firearms law, and I do a lot of, I'd also sue the sheriff's office when they deny people permits improperly, permits to carry. The police department, not so much.
Are there different counties that are more restrictive than others?
Yeah.
Do you deal with the whole state or?
Yeah,
okay.
I do. All
okay.
87 counties.
All right.
I've hit 47 out of the 87 so far.
Okay.
It's an interesting thing, and my goal is to hit every one of them in my career. But yeah, I mean, there are counties that are more restrictive than others. Understandably, it's Ramsey County, Hennepin County tend to be a little bit more restrictive. You get into the core cities, and they're a little bit more concerned with what do you need a gun for, versus you get into Greater Minnesota, and they're like, yeah, what?
Of course you're
got
gonna
a
have a gun.
Yeah, what do you need? Yeah, of course, I'm going hunting later.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, but so I sue the sheriff when they improperly deny people permits, and it's kind of all things firearms.
And just to clarify, Minnesota is a permit to carry state, not a conceal. We say conceal and carry, it's permit to carry, so it's open carry in Minnesota, right?
No, it's not open carry.
It is not open
carry.
No,
we are
Keith,
concealed carry.
Why don't you take us out to break?
Okay. I didn't hear the music playing. Can you cue the music for Kelvin, please? There you go.
There you go.
Okay. We got to go out and pay some bills. Well, we're learning from Kelly Keegan, an attorney at law, and she's a gun attorney. Was that what you said?
I'm a criminal defense
criminal
attorney.
defense attorney who specializes in the area of guns or can help you in that area. And we learned this segment that size matters. We're going to find out more when we come back.
Black Shack attack, Black Shack barbecue. Yeah.
Kelly Keegan's here. We're talking about gun rights. We learned last segment that size matters when we're talking about shotguns,
Barrels.
and how they're measured and such. And then we kind of at the tail end, between the segments, we were talking about all the things that we can't talk about.
So go to Facebook. No.
So let's talk about those things. So what I'm curious about is, and this is what made me what made me think about this in the first place, is that you kind of get the feeling that you're maybe a target. I don't know if it's paranoia or whatever it is, because you start getting concerned. I mean, they're burning stuff down. They're talking about coming to the suburbs and burning things down, and your public, in your little area, and it's like, ooh, I need to load me up, right? And so then I'm thinking, so I start reading, it's like this castle doctrine business. What does that mean in Minnesota? And if someone breaks into the house and is coming down the hall at me,
What are my rights?
What are my rights? And what can I do before I go to prison?
Yeah, we're coming up close on the anniversary of the Byron Smith case in Morrison County. If you remember, this was Thanksgiving Day, 2012. And there were two roughly 18-year-old kids, 17, 18, that broke into Byron Smith's house, and he shot them dead, both of them. And it ignited this debate about the castle doctrine in Minnesota and whether we should have it. We don't have it. What the castle doctrine is that the idea that you can use lethal force against an intruder in your home. And the way that Byron Smith went wrong, it's a really interesting case study about what is going too far.
Mm-hmm.
Because he obviously got convicted of murder, and a lot of people were really upset by this because of the notion that, hey, if somebody breaks into your house, don't you have a right to defend yourself and your property? And the thing,
absolutely yes.
Yeah, right? I mean, right? So, but the way that Byron Smith went wrong is that he went too far. And what I mean about too far is, if everybody remembers this case, he did all kinds of things that really showed that he was sort of laying in wait for these people. He had been burglarized, I think, about 6 times in the preceding months leading up to this event. So he had been this victim of a crime, and I think that would really rightfully give anybody a lot of trauma over that.
Mm-hmm.
But he somehow realized that there was going to be another burglary. And he took his car on Thanksgiving Day and parked it down the road to make it look like he was not home.
Oh, so he was trapping him.
Yeah. And there was some dispute about why he had parked his car down the road. But he had parked his car down the road, presumably, and the state argued that it was because he was trying to make it look like he wasn't home. And sure enough, here are these 2 kids, and there was evidence that they had broken into this particular residence previously. But so they came and they broke into the home, and he had set up this sort of bunkerish type of, setting in his basement where he had, water and snacks. I mean, he was there for hours waiting for these people to break in. And when they did, first the boy broke in and he shot him dead. And then he went over, and the guy, it was downstairs in the basement, and he had fallen down the stairs, and then he went and shot him again. And so it was like...
So he was down, and he shot him while he was down.
Exactly. So he wounded him the first time.
Okay.
And then he went and actually...
Executed him.
Yeah, exactly. And then what he did was he figured that there was another person involved, and that would be coming in second.
Mm-hmm.
And so he took this kid's body and dragged it into a different room and hid it. And then he sat again and waited for the second person to come in.
Wow.
And so then the second person, this young man's cousin, a female, came in, shot her. She was wounded, and then his gun jammed. And so he sat there, listening to her kind of yelp and pleading for her life. And then he's talking to her, and he's recording the entire thing. There's recordings of this posted online. It's absolutely chilling. But so he shot her and then executed her. And the issue at trial, he gets charged with murder, and the issue at trial is, what is self-defense, and should we have the castle doctrine? And we don't. And everybody kind of said, look, if he had just left it at the first shot where you wound the intruder, You've neutralized the threat. He would have been fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But to then take steps to really just execute somebody after
Yeah.
that, too far. And they said, look, this is not self-defense. I mean, self-defense, we don't have stand your ground. We don't have castle doctrine in Minnesota. You have to be reasonable in your actions. You have to neutralize a threat, but nothing more.
Well, what if the other party's not reasonable?
Well, again, it's so, I mean,
Yeah, so you wound him, but he still has a firearm
He's
in
still
himself.
coming.
So
Well,
he's
so the threat's
then-
not neutralized.
Okay.
okay.
You know,
Fair.
All right.
I mean, and the thing about these cases is people say, well, I can do this or I can do that, but they're so fact specific.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to look at an individual situation and say, well, what would a reasonable person do in this situation? And it's all fact specific because one person's neutralized threat might be another person's ongoing
Yeah,
threat.
to me, reasonable is keep shooting until the gun is empty.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Seems reasonable.
I think a lot of people would
seems
agree with
reasonable to
you.
me. Just boom, 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 boom. I mean, it all happens in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you're in a total state of panic. Someone's coming at you, and so you just empty the clip on them.
Yeah. Which also leads to another point I want to raise, which is, it's really hard after some type of incident like this. It is incredibly difficult not to run your mouth and to be talking to the police. And defense attorneys are like, please, please, if you have anything, if you take one thing away from this entire discussion, it's please don't talk to the police. And your adrenaline is going. It's a lot more difficult than you
You
think.
call this 800 number, and it is the critical response team.
Mm-hmm.
And you get Kelly on the phone, and then she'll say, keep your mouth shut. I'm on my way.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us that process when you get a call, and so how are we doing? We're good. What is the process in Minnesota? So it's just reasonable. So I'm going to play a joke on Hittner and on Halloween. I'm going to come into his house. He can probably shoot me, right? What's his right? What can he do? And you're just saying it's just whatever's reasonable.
Well, it's about what would an objectively reasonable person do in that situation? Is it objectively reasonable to, not know that you're coming into his home and he thinks you're an intruder and shoots you? Probably reasonable. But to then walk up to you and execute you in cold blood, knowing, hey, that you're laying there wounded and really not going to do anything at that point? No, not reasonable.
If he's laying there wounded, can you kick him?
Oh boy, probably. I mean, that's going to be between you and him, I guess. But and also, don't record yourself.
Yeah, that's the
doing
other
this
thing,
stuff. I mean,
Sheila, hit record.
Okay,
Hit record.
so let's just kind of walk through this. So so I'm in. That's an extreme case, and I think that one's pretty clear to see. I mean, when you got someone laying on the floor and you go up and pop them in the head, that's probably no bueno. Obviously, because he's in prison now for life. So
Is he in prison for life or what?
yeah, he got a
life.
life sentence.
Yeah.
He was convicted of first-degree murder.
yeah, absolutely. So now, so now I'm in the sack, and I hear some rummaging out in the other room, and I grab my sawed-off 19-inch shotgun from underneath my bed with a full shoulder thing. I haven't cut. Can you cut the thing off, or
You can.
Wouldn't
You're
recommend
getting it. Yeah,
you're
I wouldn't
getting
recommend
dicey?
it.
Okay, so I got the full. The small shotgun that's meant to be in the woods where trees are, because they have a shorter barrel. So I pull it out from under my bed. I go down the dark hall, and someone hollers at me, and I'm like, boom, right? What needs to happen at that point? At that, I don't even know. I'm alone in the house. Someone's obviously in the house with me. I know it's not my wife because she was laying next to me. So someone that doesn't belong there is in my house rummaging through my stuff. Startled me as I went out to investigate what the noise was, and I shot him with the shotgun I had under my bed. So
What do you do now?
what do I do?
Well, I think the first thing is call 911. You want to get the person aid, but don't say anything. Just say, "Hey, I'm here in my home. This is Keith. I've shot somebody. Please send the police." Click. Okay. Don't make statements about, "Oh my God, this person." Just keep it short.
Just keep it short.
It's more difficult
Loose
than
lips
you
sink
think.
ships.
Yep, exactly. It's more difficult than you think. So first thing is call for aid. You don't want to be doing things where you're just not giving the person any kind of chance of survival or aid. Second thing, call a lawyer, because the lawyer will
Not
take
just
over.
any lawyer.
You want a criminal defense attorney.
Yeah.
Don't call, your friend Sheila's cousin
Right,
who
right.
Who does
did a
some real
will.
estate law
Yeah,
and
who
a
wrote
will.
up a will for you. I mean,
Yeah.
no, absolutely not. You need to call a criminal defense attorney. We're on call generally 24 hours a day. Our business is not a 9 to 5 business. Things
Right.
happen on the weekends and at night, and we are usually available and responding to emergency situations. So call an attorney, and the first thing the attorney is going to do is tell you don't talk to the police. When they get there, and people are always concerned because they go, if I don't talk to the police, are they going to think that I'm
Right,
guilty?
think you're guilty. Hold it right there. So we got to go out the break. You're going to stay for another segment because
Yep.
we got to finish the story.
Okay.
And so this is your Real Estate Chalk Talk. We're broadcasting from
Give her
the
contact.
Rack Shack Barbecue Studio. Yeah, we got to give your contact a couple times, and I'll put it up online too. 612-584-3834. 612-584-3834. If you get in trouble with the law, you give her a ring-a-ling-a-ling. I'm going to have her on speed dial. We'll be right back. We were talking with Kelly Keegan about protecting your home, and I'll just take you like through the scenario. I'm in bed. I woke up. Someone was rummaging around in the house. I went like this. Sheila was there. I knew it wasn't her. Someone's out in the house. We got a problem. Pull the shotgun out from underneath the bed. I go out. There's a intruder in the house. Startles me, and I shoot him.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and now walk me through the next steps of what it is. Kind of pick it up from there.
So what we were saying is first call for aid. Call 911.
Okay.
Say, hey, send somebody. Somebody's been shot. And actually, you don't even have to say I've shot somebody. You can just say somebody's been shot. Please send help. Second, call a defense attorney. The attorney's going to tell you.
Don't call any defense attorney, though, right?
Correct. I mean,
Who should they call?
Well, me.
Okay.
I'll
Call
help
Kelly.
you. I'll help you.
All right. And what number should they dial?
My office number, which
Which-
rings everywhere, to
which
my
is-
cell.
Which is
612-584-3834.
okay. Hard to get that out of you. Go
Well,
ahead.
and can I say one thing too?
Yeah.
I get a lot of the concealed carry people that call me. They take their class and they say, have an attorney on retainer. You don't need to do that.
Okay.
We'll be there.
Mm-hmm.
We respond to, this is what we do. We
Mhm.
respond to emergency situations. You don't need to pay some attorney ahead of time and have a relationship and that kind of thing. We will be there. So
Okay.
keep my number, but you don't need to have me.
Keep the number
Retained.
in your
But
phone.
I would have senior pay your retainer.
Oh.
But so call an attorney. And people, when we left off, we were saying, don't talk to the police.
Okay.
And people say, well, if I don't give a statement, aren't they going
No.
to think that this implicates
And
me
they're
as
going to
being
pressure you
guilty?
to give a statement.
They will, absolutely. And it's really difficult because your adrenaline's going and you want to just talk about what happened.
Clear yourself.
Right. But don't talk to the police because you're going to say something that you regret later. Inevitably, you will. And defense attorneys would far prefer to construct the narrative afterward than have some client making a really idiotic statement.
Mhm.
And it'll happen because your adrenaline's going. So call an attorney. And when you tell the police, I don't want to talk to you, you don't have to say, look, I'm not talking to you. I mean, you can say, look, I would love to talk to you. But on the advice of an attorney, I need to wait till that person can either arrive, because attorneys will come down
Mhm.
in that type of situation and respond and be there as your advocate. But, just make the attorney the bad guy.
So it's 2:00 in the morning. It's not like you're sitting there waiting for the phone to ring,
Mhm.
right? So we call the number, and of course it goes to voicemail, like everybody's phone does.
Right. And this is what I'll say. I mean, against my own business interest, this is why it's good to be a U.S. Concealed Carry Association member,
Mhm.
because they have a list of attorneys. There's a couple of us in the state who respond to this type of thing, and ideally you'll get somebody. I mean, it doesn't have to be, people sleep, right? I'm
Right.
not just on high alert,
Okay.
3:30 in the morning. Somebody's going to call. I just know it.
Just
Got
know
the
this
car
is a rough
running.
one.
I back my car into the garage, not so I can rush out quickly like a fire truck.
Exactly. My little blue lights that I got going
Yeah.
on. Yeah. But so, attorneys will tell you, make the attorney the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
You would say, look, I'd love to talk to you, but this attorney has been up and down with me about not speaking to the police, and I need to follow that advice until we can sort this out. And police, I'll tell you, police actually understand this. They have a response team when they shoot somebody on the
Mhm.
job, and that is the first thing that they do. I need a lawyer. Lawyer up, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent is there for a reason. It's something that protects you, and you want to use it.
Lawyer. That's the only word you should say.
I want a lawyer.
Lawyer.
I want a lawyer.
I want. All right.
And once you
So-
do that, by
okay,
the way,
so
that,
so now you come.
Yep.
What?
Keep going through the
walk
scenario.
Walk through that dialogue. when you arrive or when you first so then what
So
are they going to
keep
do?
so
I'm
go through
still
the
I'm
scenario.
still in there. The coppers are there. The
Right.
ambulance comes and
Yeah.
hauls the guy away, dead or alive, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
So what happens then? Do they say pat me on the back and say, "Well, sorry, buddy, we'll talk to you in the morning," or they drag me down to the station?
The lawyer's going to tell you, look, we need some time. We need to have. We might be willing to come in and give a statement. You don't have to. I'd want to find out first as a lawyer: is my client a suspect? Are they looking at this as possible criminal charges on their end, or are they looking at this as truly an unfortunate incident? And you're far more likely to be considered as an accident or an unfortunate incident if you don't make statements that are idiotic. Don't make any statements at all, quite frankly, because then it's up to them to figure out, look, do we have probable cause, which is a 51% standard of saying it's more likely than not that a crime occurred here, in order to move forward with that idea that you're a suspect. And so I want to give it time. We may be willing to come in and give a statement, but not until this person has had a chance to process what just happened and to slow down. So it's not going to happen right away, but I take over as an attorney and want to talk to the police.
So do they arrest me?
They not necessarily. They could if they think they have probable cause that a crime has been committed, but they don't have to.
Okay.
If they don't think that that's present at that point, or they're trying to figure out what happened, then they're not going to arrest you at that point. They shouldn't. In order to arrest somebody, they have to have probable cause to do so. And so if they arrest you, there's a sign right there that they're going to consider you a suspect.
Right. But if you're in your home, most
Yeah, someone
likely
broke into
not,
my
right?
house.
I
That'd be
mean,
kind of chauncey if they, arrest me for it.
Right.
yeah.
Right. But that's why it's so critical not to speak to the police, because these are such fact-specific situations that something that you think is going to be helpful may later really hem you in and be harmful.
All right. Different subject. When another lifetime ago, I used to own a number of garden centers, and our garden center actually in South Minneapolis on Minnehaha Avenue, right down the street from Minnehaha Liquor Store in the 3rd Precinct, we were burglarized, robbed at gunpoint, robbed at knife point many times. And so I've seen that, how that all plays out. And fortunately, we gave them the money and out the door they went, and that was the end of it. But what would happen in a circumstance, and if at that point someone points a gun at you or sticks a knife in your face and says, "Give me your money," if I reached down, pulled out a pistol and shot him, that's more of a self-defense or like a business thing. Is any difference there, or how do you?
Well, yeah, what you're talking about is self-defense. And Minnesota is not a very good state when it comes to self-defense, in the sense that we're not a stand-your-ground law state like Florida. In Minnesota, the main things to remember about self-defense is, one, that you have a duty to retreat. So we're not a stand-your-ground state.
So
meaning,
give them the money.
Meaning, you have to take steps to get yourself out of that situation.
Okay.
Using force against a person has to be a last resort.
Any kind of force.
Well, that leads to the second point, which is
Okay.
you're allowed to use a reasonable amount of force.
Okay.
So, for example, if that person steps on my toe, and I'm being extreme here, but if that person steps on my toe, I don't have the right to then shoot them. You're
Okay.
allowed to use an equal amount of force to dispel the attack, get rid of the attacker, right? In that situation, it's like, look, if you have no other option, if you don't have an option to run, or you feel that you don't have an option to run, you're allowed to defend yourself, sure. The third thing is that it has to be an imminent attack. So it can't be, yesterday somebody threatened me and now I'm going to go,
Right.
I feel like this is threatening my life still. So this is why, again, it gets so fact specific, because it comes down to, like, if somebody's holding up a gun and saying, look, give me all the money, I'm going to shoot you. I think a person in that situation would feel like, look, if I run, what if they're going to shoot me in the back, right? It comes down to, what is a jury or a judge going to say about, do you have a duty to retreat in that situation, or did you feel like you had no other option? It's subjective. And did you use a reasonable amount of force? If they're pointing a gun at you, they're threatening a crime of violence against you, a felony crime of violence. Your life is indeed threatened in that situation. And if you shot that person feeling like you had no other option, then that would be within your right. But here's the thing about self-defense. You don't have to prove that it's self-defense. The state has to prove it wasn't self-defense. So the burden's not on you if you get charged with a crime. Ideally, you don't want to be charged with a crime and going through this conversation. But the state has to prove that it wasn't self-defense, and they try to prove it in one of three ways. The threat wasn't currently imminent, wasn't happening. you used too much force to try to get rid of that attack, or you didn't retreat when you had an opportunity to do so.
Who decides if you have? You said responsibility to retreat. Who decides that? That's the court decides. Like
pretty much a
you
prosecutor
could've-
and jury.
Jeez.
Yeah, and that's why I say you just don't want to get yourself into that situation in the first place. You know, they talk about in concealed carry classes, don't take your gun out unless you plan to use it.
Right.
So, you know, ideally you don't want to get in that situation in the first place, and that's why it's real tricky.
But
and it's
sometimes,
subjective.
I mean, in these cases, there's a case recently it was a immigrant guy had a business. They came in and robbed him. He'd been robbed many times. He got robbed again, and he chased the guy out and shot him.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually chased the guy, pursued him,
Mm-hmm.
and shot him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a problem.
That's a problem. Shooting people in the back, that's a problem. Yeah, because again,
What if they're
you're
leaving
not
with your
retreating.
stuff though?
Well,
They
that's
stole- they
defensive
stole-
property, though. And what amount of force are you allowed to use to defend property instead of your person?
That's a good point. And we're going to answer that question when we come back. This is yes, we are, because we're going to go back to 1. One is going to become 4. This is your Real Estate Chalk Talk. We're broadcasting from the Rack Shack Barbecue Studio. We're going to find out the difference between protecting yourself and protecting property, and the
Right,
different
so-
approach to those things when we come back. Welcome back to the program. Thanks for staying with us. Kelvin chastised me because I didn't get out Kelly's number enough times, so here's Kelly's number, 612-584-3834. I'll say it again at the end for you, Kelvin.
612-584-3834.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about the difference between protecting your personal stuff and protecting your personal body.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
All right.
So the example was somebody steals something from my store,
Right.
runs out with it, and it was my mom's. It means everything to me. He's run out. I'm going to chase him down. I'll shoot him because I'll slow him up.
Problem.
Took my stuff.
Problem. Yeah, that would
And he
probably be
shouldn't-
considered.
That was his problem because he came into my stuff, stole my stuff, and then left.
I don't disagree with you necessarily, but I think the law does, because the problem is that's property that you're defending at this point. This person's taken off with it, and you're not going to be allowed to use a lethal amount of force to protect property. I would think most people are going to say that that's excessive in that situation. You're going to get yourself into some trouble.
Lethal meaning killing. What about lethal meaning like hurting?
Well, again, that's subjective. I mean, I think if you hurt somebody, you're allowed to protect your property. Don't get me wrong.
To what degree? Because you told me last time I have to go retreat like a little puppy back in the corner in the fetal position when somebody's coming to steal my crap.
I wouldn't go that far.
Responsibility to retreat.
Well, what is that far though? Let me just ask
You know what I
you
mean?
that. So let's go back to the well, I don't care where you are. You're in a restaurant. Someone's harassing you in a restaurant, and so you have a duty to retreat. Do you have a duty to run out the back door? What if you don't know where the back door is?
I think that the idea is, I mean, if there is something currently happening, you're allowed to defend yourself. Don't get me wrong. We have self-defense as a defense in this state. The issue is more so these clear-cut cases where you could have gotten yourself out of the situation. You're in a fight with somebody, and you just decide that you're going to stay and start swinging, and then it goes wrong from there, and you pull out a gun. And
But you know how things accelerate. I mean, you're in a situation, words are exchanged. Next thing you know, you're poking at one another. It just kind of goes whoosh on you, and the whole thing takes perhaps 3 seconds. I mean, it's seconds. There's not a lot of time. Let's face it. One side of your brain shut off. So
And now
there
it's
is no
fight-
rational.
It's fight or flight.
Yeah,
and
there
you
is no
chose-
rational thought at
Yeah.
that point.
and you chose fight, yep.
So, you grab anything and start hitting them with it.
Well, again, it's like, okay, in that situation, what's reasonable?
Mm-hmm.
Would a person look at that and say, hey, and again, we have different opinions in society, right?
Right.
But you got to think, look, if I do this, am I going to be looked at as the aggressor in this
Mhm.
situation? And that again too is subjective. That's why this is so tricky. And they tell you, look, don't pull out your gun unless you're going to actually use it, because
Right.
it's like you can't be waving a gun around at people. I mean, that's a terroristic threat. That's a second-degree assault in Minnesota. But it's just you have to really. It's as much as you can at the time, you have to really stop and think. It's like, don't be the aggressor. If you kind of repeat something in your head, it's like, I can't be seen as the aggressor in this situation. I can do what's necessary to protect myself, to protect others, to protect my property, but it can't be excessive, and it can't be something where you're going to be the person on the offensive.
Can ask a new question? Are you
Mhm.
good?
Yeah, please.
So during the riots that were going on, we have some family friends where their kids bought a property in South Minnie, and all this stuff was happening. And they told everybody in that block, like, hey, we're not going to be here. You need to defend your property.
Mm-hmm.
They went home, got shotguns, literally sat on their front porch, and people are walking down. They're literally cocking the shotgun, saying, if you come on our property, we're shooting you.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay? Because that would, I mean, literally saying, if you come on our property, we're not going to get into like this back and forth. We're just,
But did they come on the property?
no, they stayed off because they were there with a gun
Well,
right there. So you're on the road and I'm there with my shotgun.
Well,
Going,
again-
if you come on my property, I'm going to shoot you.
well, again, it's fact specific.
Yeah.
So if I'm just walking down the street minding my own business
Mhm.
and somebody is like racking a shotgun at me, telling me,
Stay
don't
away.
come on my property, keep it moving, don't come on my property.
Yep.
No, not okay.
That's
and
not
there has
okay?
to be a threat. Because if I'm just walking down the street and I'm minding my own business and you're going to threaten me, then no, that's not okay. I have to actually.
But that's how these
Do something to
blocks
threaten you.
literally. It's interesting.
I mean,
that's
the
how
threat-
these blocks protected themselves.
Okay, so what
Right.
about
Right?
this? What about this? So now I'm going to give
No.
you all kinds of
Hold on.
scenarios. now.
Hold
What
on.
about-
Are you saying we're done with my?
No, I'm going to
Okay.
just dovetail on you.
Because sometimes you.
Synergy.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about I've got my property posted? No trespassing.
Yep.
People, trespassers will be shot.
Yep.
And then someone trespasses and they get shot. Good?
Well, yeah. I mean, that would be. I mean, somebody's actually trespassing. There's a threat.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing something to come onto your property, and you perceive that as a threat. Sure. I mean, that's different than just
How-
walking down the street minding your own business, and then somebody's there, racking a shotgun, threatening you.
They're on their property. They're literally on their front porch. These people are coming by. They're starting to yell and scream and all that. Like, hey, if you come on our property,
That's different.
Yeah, I mean, that's different. If they're coming on your property and it depends on, again, too, what is this person's,
right?
what are they saying to you? What's the intention of this person? Are they coming because they dropped their Coca-Cola bottle and they have to pick it up? Or are they coming
They're
because,
all walking down the street and they're creating havoc.
well,
you know?
then yeah, that's a real threat.
Yeah.
So, I mean, then you're allowed to use a reasonable amount of force to protect your property. Meaning, again, in that situation, it's like, well, okay, if somebody's there and they're coming and they're threatening you and you shoot that person, you better be darn sure that was a reasonable amount of force. And you better not use any force beyond that, I'll tell you that. I know you want to unload the clip on the person, but it's...
Well, it's adrenaline, like you said. I mean, it's just you just keep shooting. Like the guy in the hallway in my house in the middle of the night, it wouldn't have just been one shot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, that person's in your house.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's different.
that's going to be a little
If
bit...
there's 3 in there, there's 3 going out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how many rounds can you have in a shotgun? You were saying earlier when we were kind of, but I mean,
3.
Only
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
You shoot all 3.
Yeah.
He's probably laying on the ground. You're just shooting because it's dark. You're shooting the refrigerator or whatever.
Yeah.
Talk about some cases that you're working on currently that are in this
World.
area.
Yeah.
That you can.
And then
Yeah.
that you can, and then also talk about the other areas of law that you know. I know it's all criminal, but like define that out a little bit. Because I
Yeah.
notice on your site you talk about expungements, pardons, gun rights, criminal defense.
Yeah. Well, the
Kelly Keegan, 612-584-3834. Just satisfy Kelvin. Kelly, 612-584-3834. Go ahead.
yeah. So it's all things criminal defense. It tends to be for me more what we call street crime.
Mm-hmm.
You know, assaults, domestic assaults, drug crimes. I don't do a ton of white collar stuff. But the firearms piece of it, what I do a lot of, and I'm busy with this time of year, is I deal with a lot of people who have lost their gun rights. I can tell very quickly and easily, does somebody have their gun rights, yes or no? And I get a lot of calls from people who
How
are
do you
very
tell?
confused. Just the laws. I mean, I
Oh,
will say
oh.
that it's a labyrinth. It's a puzzle of trying to figure this stuff out. You know, I went to my concealed carry class, and shout out to the Osseo Gun Club, because I took my class there, and they said, hey, all right, everybody, they figured out, everybody introduces themselves, go around, say why you're here. And they figured out, oh, she's an attorney and she practices in firearms law. And he says, well, if I say something wrong in this class, you'll correct me now, won't you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, first thing out of his mouth was, if you're a felon, you can't be here. And my hand goes up, and I'm like, well, that's not actually entirely true. We have a lot of exceptions to that. And the same thing, too, with domestics. If you have a domestic on your record, you're not necessarily prohibited from possessing firearms. So there's a lot of confusion out there, though. And I see it with not only judges, other attorneys, prosecutors, but the sheriffs in issuing permits. There's a lot of confusion as to who can have guns and who can't.
Is there a difference between what type of firearm? Because a conceal and carry, it basically implies pistol, right?
Yes.
Or a permit to carry
Yes,
a
but
pistol.
you can also, a concealed carry permit's also handy for just transporting firearms, even long guns.
Okay.
Because you don't have to then get into the whole issue of casing it and unloading it and making sure that it's properly transported. If you have a concealed carry permit, you can just kind of do what you want
Throw it
with
in the back seat.
Yeah. But, with firearms, I mean, I don't fault the people who are working in this stuff because the gun laws are written incredibly complicated. I mean, they don't make it easy for people. So it's an interesting thing for me. I mean, I've been getting a lot of calls from people wanting to, see if they're prohibited, and I can help them with that. And if they are prohibited, how do they fix it? People who get denied a purchase and the NICS system. The NICS system is interesting. It's a hot mess, but I mean, they have people who get put on a delay and people who get denied and they want to fix it. How do I go about this? And the FBI is not particularly helpful. They'll tell you the reason for why you're being delayed or denied a purchase, but they don't really do a lot in terms of saying, well, here's how you take steps to fix it. But that's me. You can call me and I can
Because they don't
walk
care if
through.
you fix it, essentially.
Yeah, I mean,
Why would they care?
Yeah.
They just assume you didn't have one.
The other thing that's interesting is I'll say the laws really have shifted. And I'm not saying changed, but after the Sandy Hook school shooting in December of 2012, the federal government really took a lot of the laws that are on the books currently and really started to define terms more broadly. So they said, look, we can't get anything passed in Congress to change the gun laws, but we're going to take the things that are already on the books and start to define them more broadly. An example, there's a common perception that if you get some case expunged in Minnesota, it fixes it. The feds said, wait a second, when we said expunge it, it has to reverse a conviction for us to say that's valid. And Minnesota's expungement does not do that.
Okay.
So there's things where people think, well, this is how I fix it. And it's like, nope, not anymore.
So when you say broadening, you're talking really restricting.
Yeah, restricting rights of people. There was a
Okay.
lot of that happening after the Sandy Hook school shooting. Executive orders, laws that the FBI has now started to say, hey, we're going to broaden who this applies to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, we got 19 seconds left. Kelly Keegan, attorney at law, gun rights expert, 612-584-3834. If you have anything going on in your life where you're involving firearms at all, give Kelly a ring-a-ling and she'll help you work through it.
I will.
And she'll be happy to help you. And that first consultation is with charge.
No.
No, it's not. It will be super expensive. It's awful.
Okay, we'll be back next week.